I say thank you for choosing us once more. Today, I would like us to talk about the rise and fall of the Soviet Union. In this video, we are going to discuss why the Soviet Union came into power, how the Soviet Union came into power, and the role the Soviet Union played in the Second World War and the Cold War, and the weapons and the evolution of the weapon systems. And finally, we are going to talk about the fall of the Soviet Union and the reasons that fell to the fall of the Soviet Union. Thank you very much. Sit down and watch us illustrate to you step by step. Now, the Soviet Union, which is officially known as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, otherwise abbreviated as USSR, was a federal socialist state in North Eurasia that existed in 1922 to 1991. Actually, the Soviet Union officially fell out in 1991 and was officially formed in 1922. Now, the word Soviet itself is derived from a Russian word Sovet, which means council. So this translates to an understanding that the Soviet Union was just a union of councils. Now, you may wonder what a council is. During that time, in the Eurasian part of the world, governments and states were basically known as councils. The Soviet Union was a one-party state governed by a communist party, whose capital city was Moscow. Moscow was the largest capital republic, actually the Russian SFSR. It was the largest country in the world by surface area, spanning over 10,000 kilometers. Its diverse population was collectively known as the Soviet people. So up to date, we still have people who still identify themselves as the Soviet people. The Soviet Union had its own roots in October Revolution of the 1917. This is when the Bolsheviks, headed by Vladimir Lenin, overthrew the provisional government that had earlier on replaced the monarchy system of governance. They established a Russian-Soviet Republic, beginning a civil war between the Bolshevik Red Army and the many anti-Bolshevik forces across the former empire. The disastrous destructive effect of the war and the Bolshevik policies led to the death of about 5 million people during the famine that took place between 1921 and 1922. The Red Army expanded and helped local communities take power, establishing the Soviets, representing their political opponents and rebellious peasants through the policies of Red Terror and war communism. So this kind of war was basically between the Red Army and the anti-Bolshevik forces across the former empire. So you can see that the former empire is now at war. But in 1922, the communists emerged victorious, and they therefore formed the Soviet Union with the unification of the Russian government, the Transcaspian government, Ukrainian, and the Belarusian republics. They all formed the Soviet Union. But then the new economic policy which had been introduced by Lenin led to partial return of free market and private property, resulting to a period of economic recovery. One thing I had not told you is that the Soviet Union was governed by the communist kind of governance, or communist kind of economy, where everyone is for everyone and God is for everyone. And later on, you will see that these are one of the reasons why the Soviet Union failed. You can see that around the globe, most communism type of governance failed. One good example is in Africa is a country called Tanzania, where their first president, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, believed in the communist kind of governance, a governance where everything belonged to everyone and everyone belonged to someone and someone was for everyone. So this kind of governance prioritizes all individuals to access all resources regardless of whether or not you have worked for. For instance, in a communist state, if one buys a car, that car will belong to the entire community. So if you had a car and went to buy something at the shop, someone else will still use that car to go to another place, whether or not you still wanted to use that car. So this kind of economy actually does not encourage people working for their own resources, people working for their own wealth, and people working for their own money. And this kind of ideologies is what brings down the communist type of governments. Now, just 18 years after the Soviet Union was formed, that is 1921, to 1939, something strange happened. We had what we call the Second World War coming into place, and the Soviet Union played a very key role in the Second World War. Now, the Second World War was a very funny war, which began unexpectedly after a very powerful dictator was killed, bringing some powerful states in the world to war at each other. By the time the Second World War was beginning, the United States of America was not really interested in fighting this small war, and it was just interested in making other countries collide and fight each other to benefit from it. So US will actually benefit by selling weapons to the fighting countries, although it will identify itself with one side of the fighting countries. However, the plan of US benefiting from this war came to happen. US really solved the war, and its economy, which was going into recession, came into being active. But US did not benefit completely or have its plan go through as it wanted, that never to take part into war. It found itself into the center of the war once again. This happened when Japan hit a place in USA, and USA had to retaliate by throwing very powerful bombs back to Japan, bombs that are very historic up to date. You remember the story of the Fat Man bomb. Fat Man, mtu munene. The Fat Man bomb that was through to Japan, and the Hiroshima bomb, which actually affected Japan up to date. The Soviet Union by 1939 had unsuccessful efforts to form the anti-fascist alliance with the Western powers. Now, this one just came in line with the Second World War after the Soviets formally neutralized the invasion of territories of several Eastern Europe states, forming the Eastern Poland and the Baltic states. There is the role that the Soviet Union played very key in the Second World War, that the Soviet Union was manufacturing weapons using a technology that the US was stealing from Germany. Remember, during the Second World War, Germany had a very strong technology for war, and the main reason why Germany fell out is because US had a very brave pilot who used the 6 o'clock rule to fight the German pilots by that time. So he will rise above all of them in space and bring his plane down, seeing all his friends on the back of their plane, and he will easily shoot them down. So the kill rate of US against Germany was 1:10, which literally brought out Germany. Now, Japan itself had to accept defeat because US had threw very powerful bombs in his territory. So the effect of the bombs that were thrown to Japan was a manifestation of how powerful United States was. So in this scenario, you will realize that United States threw these bombs to Japan, not necessarily to win, to look like it's very powerful over Japan or win the war, but to warn the entire world that it was very powerful in terms of war. This is how the bombing took place. In August 1945, R.S. Truman, the President of the United States by then, ordered the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima in Japan. This marked the end of the Second World War and the beginning of the Cold War. The Cold War was mainly between United States of America and the Soviet Union. The first bomb hit Hiroshima. 60% of the city turned and burned. This turned Japan's pride into ashes of wasted labor. 80,000 souls perished. Japan's king Hirohito was asked, "Are you surrendering, or your heart is still hardened like John Cena's game of I Don't Quit? Do you surrender?" "No," he answered. Another one was dropped at Nagasaki. Fat Man was the name of the bomb. 40,000 more souls perished. Hirohito, after seeing this, he gave in. I am saddened by how long he took, just how long he had to wait in order to give up. The first nuclear bomb was made in 1938 using a technology put forward by Otto Hahn, Leiz, Meitner, and Stratmann of Germany. United States of America's president by then, President Franklin, convinced the Council of Congress to allow United States of America manufacture and sell weapons by invoking the law on weapons. This idea was warmly welcomed. This is called benefiting from conflicts. USA's main tactic used around the world. They sell weapons and watch fools fight. This was later called the Manhattan Project. Now, using the Manhattan Project and a devil's mind, they began scientific research for making bombs and selling to the world. I call it a devil's mind because the work of the devil is to destroy. Today, the world is in trouble because of scientists and devil minds in Africa who practice commercial witchcraft. The minerals used to make the bomb were mined in Democratic Republic of Congo, and they came from a mine called Shikolongwe Katanga. For the project to be completed, it took $2 billion. This amount literally translates to about $30 billion in the current economy. When this is converted to Kenya shillings, it becomes 3,210 billion Kenyan shillings. And when converted to Uganda shillings, this becomes 128 trillion 400 billion Uganda shillings. Spending all this money to do a research? If this is what it takes to be called a developed country, let them be called developed countries. They are very serious, not joking like us. Robert Oppenheim, a nuclear bomb expert, was the designer of the bombs. The testing of the bombs was done in 1945 after President Franklin had died and President Truman had taken over. 1 month later, after President Truman had taken over, Germany surrendered. Now, after Germany surrendered, Japan was asked to surrender. Japan, knowing he will not win this war, but still refused to surrender. He said, "These are empty threats." US attacked Japan with the Little Boy bomb. The jet that was used to throw the bomb was called Enorage. This was the name of the mother to the pilot of the jet that did the bombing. The pilot's name was Colonel Paul Tibet, and the mother of the pilot, Enorage. 20,000 men in the army died, and over 70% of the buildings collapsed into ashes. Japan finally surrendered in 1945, and this brought to an end the Second World War with such a painful story. However, after the Second World War, a Cold War developed between United States and the United Soviets. This Cold War was practiced by making of bombs that looked much more stronger than each opponent's. Remember, during the Second World War, United States and the Soviet Union were on one hand, while Japan and Germany were on the other hand. Now, this one looked like a war between the superiors of the Second World War. Later on, the Soviet Union will make a very powerful nuclear bomb to threaten what United States had used in the Second World War. This one was capable of consuming a whole country. In response, United States made a hydrogen bomb. The hydrogen bomb, as documented, has the ability to consume a whole continent into ashes. Just look at the type of minds these people have, the kind of environment these people are creating for us to stay in. Mark you, this never marked the end of everything. For in a fight, everyone is determined to be the giant. The United Soviets again came up with a thermonuclear bomb. Now this was 1,000 times more powerful than the hydrogen bomb. The thermonuclear bomb is said to be able to consume the entire atmosphere and the earth together with its ozone layer when it goes into action. Now, this kind of competition in the Cold War, the push and the pull, the advancement in the war technology led into something we call formation of treaties and negotiations between the Soviet Union and the United States of America and many other powerful countries. Remember, by this time of period, even the most countries that had colonized the world, Britain, France, were nowhere to be seen. They were scared to the ground. They could not participate in this kind of war. Now, the Soviet Union had amassed so much reputation and power that in 1970s, relationship with the United States began to have tension. Now, this is because the US was beginning to play its tactical games on the Soviet Union. the US was finding it necessary to bring down the Soviet Union because it was a threat to its own existence and its own supremacy. The Soviet Union had come up with a very powerful technologies that the US were finding them a threat. Remember, the Soviet Union had come up with the first ever satellite technology and the first human space flight. These achievements, if brought together, and many more that the Soviet Union could achieve later on, will easily render the United States useless. Now, the United States became a very key player in the fallout of the Soviet Union in 1991. This is how the events unfolded. In 1970s, there was tension between the Soviet Union and the United States of America. Now, these tensions resumed again in 1979, when the Soviet Union was unable to deploy troops in Afghanistan. There was a war in Afghanistan that needed the Soviet Union troops. Now, the war drained economic resources, and this was matched by an escalation of American military aid to the Mujahideen fighters. Now, on 25th December 1991, Gorbachev resigned, and remained 12th Constituent Republic emerged from the dissolution of the Soviet Union, independent of the post-Soviet states. The Soviet Union is remembered for so many significant and social as well as technological achievements and innovations of the 20th century. These included the first Ministry of Health in the world, the first human-made satellite, the first humans in space, the first probe to land on another planet. This was Venus. So these achievements were making the US a hotspot. Now, the Soviet Union, this time round, now being tactically fought by the United States, it was also facing a test of the communist nature of governance. Because in a communist nature of government and governance, everything that belongs to a state belongs to all the states, and anything belonging to an individual belongs to everyone. So by this time, there were a rise of world business people and economic mafias, which in complete nature, they will like a competition, which cannot be favored in a communist nature of governance. So these two factors brought together the US interference in the Soviet Union and the communist nature of governance. The Soviet Union was bound to fail. So in 1991, the Soviet Union officially collapsed, and all its former states officially collapsed, and all its former states became governments of their own. Although Russia is still a very powerful country, but is not as powerful as it was when the Soviet Union was together. So this brings us to the end of our story about the rise and fall of the Soviet Union. If you have liked this presentation, we kindly ask you to like our video. You can also share this video with your friends, and we shall appreciate. You can also write us a comment on any other content and topic you like us to address. If you do not like this video, hit the dislike button. We kindly ask you to subscribe to this channel in order to get more about us. Make sure you have hit the bell so that you get alerts on any video we post. Thank you very much. Let's meet in the next video.